Open door policy. We see it everywhere, we hear about it all the time, and it's something that we hear just as much probably in manufacturing, really as much as anywhere else. You're a supervisor and you tell your team, hey folks, anytime you want to come see me, open door policy, my door is always open. The reality is that not many people actually walk through the door. Not many people on your team actually come through to talk to you. And you might ask yourself, why does that happen? And the leaders in your organization, your managers and the directors are saying, well, why isn't anyone bringing concerns to the front? Why aren't we getting informed of these problems? What's going on? Why aren't people saying anything? So the door was open, the policy was real. You might even have a policy that speaks to availability, for example, of your leaders. So the intention was genuine, but what happened? Why didn't it work? Well, the reality is that the door is not a culture, it's a policy. And we need to talk about behaviors that create what we would consider to be more of an open door policy, and why the open door policy maybe isn't that great of an idea when it comes to manufacturing. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Leader Feeder, where we share practical tips with you and your team. My name is Kirk, I'm your host. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about the open door policy and why maybe it's a little bit of a myth in the manufacturing sector. All right, so we've got the open door policy, like I mentioned, and why is it that it maybe isn't as effective? Well, there's a couple pieces here. The first thing is more of a concrete, practical piece, which is that if you're in a manufacturing setting and the supervisor actually does have some sort of an office or a spot that their desk is at, which isn't always common in manufacturing. We work with lots of different manufacturing clients, and we have many situations where the supervisor doesn't really have a dedicated office. They might have kind of a workstation, perhaps. It's usually not dedicated for them necessarily. But in any case, so you've got, in the cases where we do have supervisors that have their own space, we've got this situation of a pretty open, exposed floor, right? And now I want to go talk to the manager, or rather my supervisor, about something. It's a very public act to go walk to the supervisor's desk and have a conversation, especially once you get pointing out to this isn't working or this person said that or what have you, right? You can imagine that's a pretty public thing. And ultimately, it's one of the reasons that the open door policy doesn't actually lead necessarily to more communication. Because if you have to do this public, sometimes what might feel like a bit of a walk of shame, go into the supervisor's office, have this discussion and walk back, inevitably everybody who was watching or listening is kind of going, what were they just talking about? Why were you in there? What were you talking about? And so that's one of the reasons that I think it can fail. The other part is that we know that for a supervisor, typically you've got to really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And so the idea of sort of putting yourself in your office, obviously, any person has a little bit of correspondence they have to do in their job, some more than others, of course. And yet if they spend all of their time at the computer or answering emails or whatever, and not enough time out on the floor, they're going to kind of be missing out and not really getting the pulse of what's happening. And they're not going to be able to really show up for their people in the way that they would be able to. Here's the other thing. In order for a supervisor to have team members that actually are going to go to those supervisors and talk to them, ask them questions, share concerns, it's not about just having the policy and putting a sign on the door that talks about the open door policy. It's about having a relationship with your team that makes you feel safe to go talk to them about questions, concerns, problems, brain troubleshooting or brainstorming or what have you, right? So it actually takes the building of a relationship of trust and respect. And that, of course, goes both ways. But we want to talk a little bit about how to actually build that rather than worrying about publicizing the open door policy, right? In our program, we list a few behaviors that we feel builds trust. And some of those are delivering on your promises, owning your mistakes, speaking the truth, listening before passing judgment, being accountable. In terms of building respect, we talk about being approachable, staying engaged, not being dismissive, avoiding sarcasm, or being conversational rather than yelling or demanding, and encouraging and reinforcing the positives rather than always focusing on the negatives. And one thing you hopefully notice about that as I read through that list is those are all behaviors. Those are things that you can put those into policies if you want, but it takes a human being acting out those behaviors in order for them to become real. And so if you have the open door policy, but you don't have a leader that is demonstrating those behaviors every day on the floor with their team, the open door policy falls flat. And so it's more important that the leader is probably out of the office engaging in those behaviors, right? Open communication, showing accountability, listening, asking good questions, showing up, being present. That's going to build way more trust and is going to cause people to feel way more comfortable going to their supervisor with a comment, with a question, with a concern. So that's really how we build an open door policy without having to publish any sort of open door policy. It's simply through building trust and respect through some of those different behaviors, as well as others, of course. And so once you do that, the reality is that you're not going to have to wait for problems to walk through the door. Right? You're not going to have to wait to hear about a problem from someone on the floor and go, oh my gosh, and start to go into firefighting mode, right? The best supervisors don't wait for problems to walk through the door. They walk the floor looking for problems, collaborating with their team so that they can look for problems before the problems can find them. Now, I get that's not always possible. That sounds nice and fluffy. And you're saying to me, Kirk, sometimes I don't know what machine's going to break down until a machine breaks down. Completely fair. But if you're out walking with the team more often, if you're getting that more face time, you're going to have your kind of, ear on the pulse of what's going on a lot sooner. I guess the expression is actually finger on the pulse, but whatever. Ear to the machine, finger to the pulse, and you're going to get a much better sense of what's going on the floor so that when there is a problem, you know where to go, who to talk to, and you've built the trust and respect to make sure you can have a collaborative problem-solving opportunity with the team, okay? So as we wrap up, I want to leave you leaders that are listening with a little bit of a challenge, okay? There's 3 parts to this. So the first part, I want you to remove the, my door is always open from your vocabulary, right? Don't say it, don't use it. Instead, replace it with a specific question that you would ask someone face to face. What's one thing making your job harder right now? What could we do to get that machine up and running or get the line up and running sooner? What's one way that I could help remove an obstacle for you? That's way better and more concrete and more specific than any sort of, hey, come see me, my door's always open. That's going to be your best avenue to get good information and to build trust and respect, okay? Next thing is walk the floor and make contact with every team member that you can in the first 30 minutes of your shift. So spend the first 30 minutes of your shift kind of out and about rather than in your office, okay? And you're not necessarily checking solely on production or on the numbers, right? You're checking in on the people as well. You want to do it consistently enough that it stops feeling like an inspection and starts feeling like a conversation. I'm going to tell you, the first times you do it, if this isn't something that you currently do at your company and your organization, it's going to kind of feel like when the principal used to walk in on the classroom, right? You'd walk in, the principal would walk in and the teacher would kind of stiffen up a little bit and all of you students would stiffen up and, the teacher gave you that look of like, don't you step one hair out of line in this next 20 minutes or else, right? Then the principal would leave and everything would kind of go back to normal. But imagine if the principal stepped in for 15 minutes every single day. You'd eventually relax, you'd exhale a little bit, you'd breathe a little bit, and you'd start to go, oh, this is just normal. This is just what happens. This is part of the routine. So what I'm saying is the first couple times that you do these walkarounds, these walkabouts, you may notice that people feel a little bit stiff. They might think, oh, am I being micromanaged? What's going on? Why do I suddenly need to report to this person a couple times in a shift or at least once a day? Because it might feel in the beginning like you're removing their sense of autonomy. But once they see that you're not there to micromanage, you're there to just be informed and be in the know so that you can help them when and where needed, they will start to be far more receptive to it. Keep in mind too, different personalities react differently to this kind of stuff. There might be people who take a longer time to warm up to this than others. But also think about this. The sooner you start doing it, the sooner it becomes the norm. And imagine that next employee that comes on board. And when they ask the rest of the team, hey, I notice the supervisor, I notice Jim, he's coming around like every single morning and just chatting with me for a couple minutes, seeing how everything's going. He asks if I have any issues. Is that normal? Imagine when the rest of the team goes, yeah, he's always really present. He's always very available to us. He's great to work with versus, oh yeah, he just started doing this. We're not really sure what to make of it. Or this is the first time it's happened. We're as scared as you are. So the sooner you start doing it, even if you might mess it up a little bit, it might feel a little bit awkward at the beginning, the sooner it becomes a habit, right? The better off we're going to be. And then the third challenge is next time someone brings you a problem or a suggestion, or when you're doing a walk around, if someone mentions a problem or a suggestion, try to act on it if you can. Come back and tell them what you did and why, assuming that you need to be involved as the supervisor, of course. Do that a couple of times and watch what happens and how much more information starts coming your way when they see that you're dealing with the problems that they're bringing you. So those are my 3 challenges that I want to leave you with, all related to kind of being a more proactive supervisor, getting out on the floor, and a little bit of abandoning this open door policy mentality. So once you've done all of that, you might still have some leadership opportunities that you want to expand on. Maybe you want to work on a little bit of conflict or communication or how to give better feedback. Well, Unique Training and Development is here for you there. We would love for you to reach out to us and have a conversation about how we can help your organization and really improve the leadership development and make sure that it's there for your employees as they need it. So that starts with a conversation, and you can find us online and reach out to us at uniquedevelopment.com.